What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Chess Gains and the second episode of my Road to Rapid Top 1000 series. Now, I was originally going to make this a weekly series, but I realized that I play so many of these Rapid games, and my games are just so interesting that I think I'm going to make it a daily series. And today I have a very interesting game for you once again, as I came up against a titled player, a national master. Now, a national master is someone that is supposedly really good at chess. I'm just kidding. I'm just taking a dig at him because deep down I'm just insecure about my lack of a title. But anyway, I was really excited for this game because this is only the second time I'm playing a titled player in a Rapid game, as I've played plenty of them in Blitz games, and I actually have a pretty good record against masters. I might even make a video where I look at some of my highlights against titled players because there's been some good games. But anyway, this guy is a strong player, of course, and I'm actually really glad that I looked at his profile because now I know that his name is Larry Storch, and he's actually the president of the Central Florida Chess Club, so shout out to Larry. His USCF rating is just over 2,200, which is over 300 points higher than mine, so going to be a tough test for me. He's with the white pieces, I'm with the black pieces, and he opens with d4. And I go knight f6, we have c4, and g6. I'm going for the Grunfeld defense. Now, this is my preferred tool against d4 nowadays because it's a very sharp opening. There's a lot of attacking chances for black right out of the go. Like, if white's not careful, it can be black that actually takes over and has the advantage. So he goes knight c3, and now d5, which is the main move of the Grunfeld, immediately counteracting his control of the center. He goes knight f3, bishop g7, and now he takes, which is another key feature of the Grunfeld, and now e4. So I take his knight, and he recaptures. So at first glance, it looks like I didn't really accomplish anything because he has a pretty strong pawn center with these three pawns. But the problem is, for him, this pawn is going to become weak, and it's going to become a target of my attacks. So now I immediately go c5. The idea here is, if he were to take, I can now grab this pawn, and it's a fork, attacking the king and attacking the rook at the same time. So he's going to, well, one way to go about it would be to defend with the bishop. A lot of times people will do this, but he actually went rook b1, which is a smart move. It's already putting pressure against my pawn. And it's also anticipating, if my queen ever comes here, he might defend with the bishop and then jump in with the rooks to try to scare my queen away. So, after this move, I simply castle, just developing further. And now he develops his bishop, and I play knight to c6, putting pressure against his center. And now he made a very aggressive decision to push this pawn to d5. It seems like I can capture here, but this actually would have been a mistake because after he blocks, I basically have to take because if I retreat, he'll just take my knight. And once I take, queen takes, and suddenly it becomes clear that this knight doesn't really have a good square. It can't go here because this knight guards here. If it goes here, the knight will take, and after pawn takes, the queen will take. This is also not such a good option because the pawn will scare it away. So that leaves only here and back here. And again, neither of those two options look appealing. I didn't want to go into this. So instead, I just move the knight to the center because now the bishop protects it. And after he captures, I recapture. And now he played queen d2. So he has to keep an eye on this pawn. Like I said, this is basically my main tool here, is to try to go after this pawn and put a lot of pressure on it. He has to defend it somehow. If he were to have defended it with the bishop like this, then I can actually go pawn here, and believe it or not, I'm already starting to become better because I'm trying to break down his center and his bishops are awkwardly placed. So after queen to d2, I immediately jumped in with my queen. Again, we have two attackers here. He has to defend it. If he were to push, huge mistake. Here comes bishop c3, and this is now winning the queen. If he were to defend with the bishop, then I can just take this pawn. So that really only leaves him one option, which is to defend with the rook. So now I'm looking at this position, and I really don't like his pawns here. It's very hard for me to try to coordinate an attack when he's controlling the center, which is the main avenue. So I decided to play pawn to e6 to try to break this up. And he now immediately tries to kick my bishop out of the center with tempo because he's attacking, forcing me to go back. And now he castled, which is definitely not the best move. The move that he should have played here, and the one that I was already starting to plan for, is pawn to d6. This pawn is now coming dangerously close to the end of the board. If I make a slow move like this, he can go here, and I'm losing the bishop. Because if I were to try to put a pin on the pawn and attack his queen, he will take and promote to new queen. And I can't even take because I'm in a pin. I would just be down a piece. So I would have had to play rook here, but now here comes e5, and now he has this very strong pawn chain, which is stopping my bishop from being active. And an attempt to break up this chain, he would start harassing me with moves like this. He could just castle, and if I were to take, here comes queen g5, and now my bishop and my rook are both under attack. That would be a really tough situation to be in. So I'm relieved that he actually did not play the best move here. He just castled, because this allows me to take myself. Now he has to recapture the pawn. If he were to take with the queen, then I can just go here, and this is called a skewer. I'm attacking his queen, and after his queen moves, the rook. So he has to take with the pawn. And now as soon as he recaptured, and I got a glimpse of this position, one move really stood out to me, and it's not a move that is easy to spot. Moves that are easy to spot here would be like something like rook here, maybe the bishop here. But the move that I actually played, and the move that I had to calculate for a few minutes to make sure that it actually works, is pawn to c4. Now this move seems very foolish because I'm just putting my pawn in the way of his bishop. But if his bishop were to take, here comes queen to c5 check, attacking the king and attacking the bishop. He can't block and protect the bishop because bishop will take. So he would be losing the bishop. And it's not really clear what to do here. This move actually sent my man Larry into like a deep think. He didn't make his next move for 5 minutes. And the reason is because this move is just so discoordinating. His rook wants to be here to defend this pawn, but now it's under attack and he can't take. So he played rook to b4. So now I have two of his pieces attacking my pawn. I gotta act. So first I throw in this queen to c5 check. His king has to go to the corner. And now here comes my pawn shoring up the defenses. Now I have this nice little pawn chain assembling. He tries to break it, but I just defended my pawn. And he decides to take. I take. And now he played the move bishop to f3, which is logical. He wants to put his bishop on the same diagonal as my rook. But I'm already starting to realize at this point that my position is shaping up pretty nicely. I may not have all my pieces developed yet, but the fact that I have this bishop putting pressure rather on this pawn is a very strong asset. My queen is well positioned. His rook is very oddly placed, not doing anything really. And I'm still got to develop this bishop. I could have a really good position soon. So I decided to play rook to d8, putting pressure on his pawn. He backed it up with his rook. And now it was a question of where I have to develop my final piece, the bishop. Now, I considered putting it here to be on the same diagonal as his bishop, but I decided instead to go to f5 because this move is a lot more flexible. He's eyeing an entire diagonal, and I'm also preparing a big disruptor move to put the bishop here to d3 because this would block his queen from the view of the pawn and would be a big annoyance. So he now played queen to e3. He has to act. He was actually thinking for quite some time. He decided on this move because if he just sits back, for example, like his main other move would be queen here, maybe to try to attack this pawn. I could simply just protect the pawn, and now his queen is oddly placed, his rook is oddly placed. He can't really get this bishop in the game, so he decided to try to be more active. This game was all about activity, all about constant pressure, and there was really no moment's rest. Like, there was always something under attack. So he plays queen to e3, basically forcing me to trade, because if I retreat, I lose his pawn. So queen takes, bishop takes, and now I just played the most straightforward move. I took on c3, which is actually not the best move. What I should have done instead was gone back and defended this first, because I can pretty much always take this pawn later. And if he were to block with the bishop, then I actually could have taken here, and he would have to take with this pawn later on. If he were to take with the rook, his back rank is exposed, and after we trade rooks here, suddenly I have this move rook to e8, and this is already a killer blow, threatening checkmate, and also, if his king tries to grab some breathing room, I'm just going to pick up the bishop. So he would have had to take with the pawn, but this is already a very strong advantage for me because I have two passed pawns that are connected. His pawns are doubled up, and I just have a much more comfortable position. I just need to get my king into the game somehow, and I'm going to be much better off. I'm going to probably win this. But instead, I made not the most accurate move I took, and now he took my pawn. Now it's a very active position. 2 bishops and 2 rooks for either side, and a pass pawn. So now I played bishop g3, the disruptor move that I was preparing for a while, throwing the bishop in the way of the rook. Obviously, he can't take because the pawn is protecting. So now he played pawn to d6. It looks like I can just take this, but hold on a minute, my rook's under attack. His light square bishop has now been unleashed. So I had to get the rook out the way. I'm now attacking this pawn twice, but he can defend it with his bishop, because I don't want to give up my rook in this scenario, because now he would have 2 rooks against a rook and 2 bishops, which is generally better for him. Instead, I looked at trade rooks, because his rook is very active all of a sudden. So we traded, and now we're both actually quite low on time here. This is a rapid game. We both started with 15 minutes and had 10 seconds after every move, but because this game was just so wild and there's so many possibilities, at this point we're both under 2 minutes. So, and the game it's not over yet. There's still a lot to calculate, so gonna have to think very critically, both of us. Here he played pawn g3, which is again not the best move. The problem is this move is just too slow. What he really should have done with the pawn, actually, is to put it here, because this stops my bishop from retreating to f5 to help out, to try to stop his pawn. So it's a slight little error, but it allows me too much opportunity. And here I played rook to c8, attacking his bishop, and he retreated his bishop to a3. And now I brought my bishop back because it was no longer necessary to keep it on d3. It's actually more important for me to try to defend, because his pawn is only 2 squares away from queening. I cannot allow him to queen. That would be horrible. Game over. So he now went forward the pawn, but luckily I have my rook to throw in front of it. And now this pawn is attacked twice. If you were to try to attack it, rook takes, and he has no pawn. I still have my powerful pawn, so he would be a lot worse. Instead, he has to defend it, and that's why he sends his bishop in. And now I'm getting really low on time. I had like less than a minute at this point, but the only thing I can do is just push my pawn. It's a nuclear arms race at this point. He's got his pawn, I got mine. Whoever can manufacture a way to get it into and turn it into queen is going to win. So I pushed my pawn, and now he kind of panicked here, not going to lie. Like, he's a strong player, but time pressure gets to you. And what he should have done was probably brought the rook in, even though it looks weird, but I really, if I push the pawn, he's already watching it, and this would allow him to bring his king in, maybe maneuver his rook somewhere else. Instead, he brought the bishop back, and this is just way too passive a move to play in such a active position. Another move that stuck out to me in the game was this, bishop to e7, and I thought that this was going to be really bad, but I really could have just gone here. And now if he were to promote, I could actually just take, and let's say he takes. Now my pawn is much more powerful, and suddenly he can't stop me from either taking his rook or making a queen. So that's why he brought his bishop back. He just wanted to make sure that my pawn can't get to the edge of the board. But now I played the only move that seemed logical under time pressure, just attack his rook. And here my opponent actually made a decisive blunder, which is crazy to think that a national master could make such a move, but time pressure gets to all of us. No one's perfect. And he played rook to e1, and I mean, his idea is clear. He wants to go here and attack my king and try to trade rook so he can promote, but he forgot that when this pawn moved forward, this bishop opened up, and bang, I take his rook, and he realized that he made a huge error. He just resigned on the spot. And like that, I managed to defeat a national master in a rapid game, which I was very proud of. I managed to roll with the punches, even as black. Very active game, could have gone either way. If we both played accurately, I kind of analyzed it after the game, it probably would have ended up being a draw because our two attacks kind of would have canceled out. But again, we would have had to play nearly perfectly in order for that to happen. So in the game of chess, basically whoever makes the last mistake loses is what's often said, and this is a perfect example of it. He made the last mistake, and I walked out with the win. So I hope you enjoyed this game today, episode 2 of Road to Rapid Top 1000. And like I said, I'm going to try to bring a game to you about every day because I've had a lot of interesting games, and I anticipate they're going to get more and more interesting as I move up the board. And to show you my progress, I actually forgot to do this the last episode. I actually, after this game, played another game, and I also won it. So I've made some really good progress. I believe I was at 1887 2 days ago, and I'm already up 30 points to 1917. I was at, I think, in the 3,800 range. I'm now at 3,400. And still have a lot of places to climb, but I'm making pretty good progress. Hope you enjoyed the game. Let me know your thoughts, and stay tuned for more.